everyone. Hi, Jelena.
Hello, nice to see you.
I want to ask you first. Are you posting videos on TikTok now? After what we said last week,
No,
why
but
not?
I made one in like not transcripts, but what I want to say today. So the only thing that I need is clean hair, which I have right now, and my phone to record myself. So this is it. But it's in the motion. Just be
Okay,
patient.
but you don't have to write a script or anything. You can just pick up your phone and say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, but I had an idea. I can share with you what is the idea about. So I just put there my thoughts. So I need to have a kind of a point. What's the point of my thought? So it's not
What's
like
the point?
script. I'm not going to read. Let me find it.
But
So
if you do that, it's gonna be like you know you're gonna like run out of ideas, or it's too much work. So you're gonna stop posting. But if you just like record whatever you know without really overthinking it, just spend like 20 minutes a day and just
Mhm.
ask a question or something like that, then it's easier to do it every day. You
True.
know what I mean?
hmm So
So what's your idea?
um, so the idea is that many times we lose connection with our partner because there is some anger, unresolved anger between partners. So the example I had is that you know how children sometimes they behave so good in kindergarten, but when they go home, they're angry, they cry, they have meltdown, and parents are like this is not the same child. Why is that child like this with me? Because parents are safe place to feel some emotions that you cannot feel in another place, and that's sometimes why between partners they feel anger toward each other, and sometimes it's because they cannot express that outside of that relationship, and sometimes they can feel that in the relationship because this is the safe place to feel this. So you need to the point is that you need to learn how to talk about that, because if you learn how to talk about it, how to resolve that anger, then you will kind of get rid of many uh, pressure from the relationship, because many times because of that anger you lack in connection, in intimacy, in many other aspects of relationship that have no relationship to this particular thing, but this it's consequence of that. So you need to address that and to talk about, learn how to deal with these emotions that are underneath, something like that.
I don't know if I get the example. Like, do kids do that?
Yeah, yeah, you
Like
have.
they're behaving normal outside and then they come home and they
Yeah.
behave differently?
Sometimes they would, this is what I hear from like examples that I see in my environment
Hmm.
from people that I know. So that a child is behaving very well in kindergarten, but then they come home and they cry for an hour, or
Really?
yeah, or they eat very well in kindergarten, but when they come home they don't want to eat, they're frustrated about things.
I've never done that. I mean, I never had that when I was young.
Well, I think me
Like, it's
neither.
hard for me to relate to that because like
Yeah.
I've never done that. So And I don't see like why they would do that. If anything,
Many,
it should be the other way around. No, like they.
yeah. Um, so from what I've heard, it's because um, parents, I think it's connected to like nowadays parenting, because parents right now are much more aware of of big feelings, their children's big feelings. So they are more present, and they want to be there to regulate their feelings. So I think this is one reason. The other reason is, I mean, you see another kids, and it's new world, it's unknown. You cannot like do whatever you want, especially if you're a shy kid, or if you are kind of observant. So
That makes sense. Like I know, I can see how like a kids would be shy in public,
hmm.
but then more they talk more or more outgoing when they're home or some, with their family.
Yeah, you can imagine that for any other emotion. Maybe it's for that it's more obvious, but also for other things. I mean, think about if you're frustrated at your work, and you cannot say that you're angry at your boss because of maybe relationship you need to maintain there, and then you come home and you see some small little thing that your partner did, and it pisses you off. So many times it's not about that thing, it's about the fact that something is like piling up inside you, and this is the place where you vent, because you can. It's your safe place. So
I don't know. I don't know. I don't do that. Like,
kind of.
yeah, there are things that like I I'll lash out. Let's say at Gigi, um, like I'll get angry at Gigi for something small,
Hmm.
but because of like, but not because of something else that happened elsewhere. It's because of what she did, and
Yeah.
like for example, like she like when I ask her to do something and she doesn't do it right, right, or she does it like she made a mistake or whatever it is, right? Like I might overreact because
Mhm.
it's something that I've told her many times to double check, right? And
Yeah.
she like, and it happens repeatedly. Then I might overreact, but it's because of it's still related to the issue. It's not totally unrelated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, this is great. Another example. So this is another way that it can happen. So if I don't know, if this is like a usual example, common example, if a woman tells a man to like move their socks, not to throw them everywhere,
Hmm.
and she repeats that, and he again is like just putting them everywhere, around the room. So then she will be pissed off anytime when she sees it. So if you have multiple things like that, then this would be this emotion many
But it's still
times.
related to that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
still related.
Yes, the thing is, you have the example with um, kids was if something is not related, but it can be also related. This is another example for maybe another video, that it can be related. So the thing is, if it is related to things that are in um, in the relationship, it's about relationship. It can also affect, even if it's stupid things that pile up, it can have bad results to intimacy. That it will be harder to hug your partner if you are so angry at them. So you will distance yourself because you cannot be close and angry and frustrated. It's hard to do it. So in any case, in the first case or in the second case, so this anger, you need to be aware of it and then to address it, to communicate it, your anger. Because if you just let it be, because of course this will happen, like, is does it change anything if I say something about that? So then, like, partners slowly distance and give them enough time so they will be roommates, not partners, for example.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have that problem, so maybe that's why I don't. If
Good.
anything, we're too emotional. Maybe we have
So,
an opposite problem.
well, I guess it's not a problem. I mean, if there are two, if there are emotions, um, or not. But anyway, you're not my target audience, so
Yeah, maybe.
yeah. Um,
the Maybe you should try the thing where I said, like, remember, like, ask a question and tell them to answer,
yeah.
and then like ask again, like instead of like just trying to give advice, have like a dialogue with the audience. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just think that you should. The first step for you is to not. Like, I think a lot of people that, like, when they start making content, their first step is to come up with some grand strategy or something like that. But I don't think that should be the first step. The first step should be for you to stop overthinking it,
Mm,
and for you to stop overthinking it, you have to put out a lot of bad content. Like, you have to start messy, right? So it's like, I think a lot of people, when they say I'm going to start going to the gym, right, or I'm going to start running every morning, like, their first step is to come up with the grand strategy. Okay, here's the day, and they put it in the calendar. Okay, today I'm going to do this, and they plan everything out, right? But that, for me, that's like a sure way for me to quit early on,
mhm.
because it becomes too overwhelming, or it's like it's all or nothing, or it's like, you know what I mean? I'm having this. I have to have this perfect routine. But if the way I start is like, okay, my goal is to just put on my shoes, walk outside, and that's it. Like, if I don't overthink and I just, if I just put on my shoes and went outside and came back in right away, that's already a success. If I
Yeah.
think of it like that, that's what's gonna get me to. That's what's gonna create a routine for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
True. Okay.
Okay.
I'll do it. Yeah, I even had a few days ago. I was in one hangout group with Sirut, psychotherapist. I
Mhm.
I mentioned her to you, and we talked something about plans for this year. La la la. So I shared something about, like, social media presence and to overcome that shame around, like, putting something that is actually bad, because as you're getting better and better, something that you see is so bad. So and then she said, like, you need to post. She said everything that you're saying. You need to post for to be better. And then she was like, do you want me to show you, like, what are my first posts, what my first post looked like? And she was like, "Oh, wait, just to scroll." And then she scrolled to her first post, and she showed picture. You couldn't even read sentence because it was like white background and yellow letters.
Mhm.
Like, but this is it. This is
Mhm.
I did what I could at that time. So, like, okay, it's not that simple. So there's no
For
miracle.
me,
I
because I have that personality too, right? Like, I have that personality where, like, I'm gonna, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it well or not do it at all.
Mm.
right? Like that kind of personality. So one of the things that I had to really like get over in my head is, okay, I'll fix it later. Like 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 every week when I post anything in Night Owl Nation or something like that, I'm like, this is not good enough. This is not, nothing is ever good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So at some point I have to say, okay, I'll just post this for now, and then I'll fix it later. I'll do a better version later, or something. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Then I feel better to post it, or I feel better to just do the thing that's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like fix it later is such a great concept, because like I used to always think like, oh, and you know what? I think it's tied to the fact that like, let's say I have a speaking gig, right? It's the same thing. If I have a speaking opportunity where I go on stage and speak, it's like it's an opportunity, right? I have to, once I speak, that's it.
Yeah.
There's I can't go back and do it again, right? So I have a feeling like, oh fuck, I forgot to say this, or I messed up, or whatever it is. So I overthink it. But it's the same thing. Like, okay, I'll just make sure I don't, like, let's say I gave a speech and I forgot to say this one whole big part, like, and that would like really bother me back then. But now I'm just like, okay, next time I speak, I'll make sure I don't forget that part.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like I think we think that there's these opportunities are rare, like job interviews, speaking, or even posting content. Like we think that these opportunities are rare, and we have to make the most out of this opportunity when we have it. But what I've learned in life is there's no such thing as a rare opportunity. Whenever somebody's like, you have to buy this now because a sale like this will never come along, or an opportunity like this will never come along, or you have to invest, you have to buy your house now because the mortgage rate is so low right now, and right now is the time to buy, or you'll never get another opportunity like that. When somebody's trying to pressure me like that, and I learned this from Tim Ferriss, my answer is always no, because I learned in life that there's no such thing as once in a life opportunity. Every opportunity, there's millions of opportunities like that out there.
Do you think that people know that? Because I think that many people think that, you need to catch your lucky star or.
Yeah, but I think it's because they put themselves in that position. Like, like the analogy I give is like, let's say you went to a basketball game, right?
Mhm.
And let's say halftime, they do a contest. They pick an audience member, and they're like, okay, you get a shot, and if you make this shot, you're gonna win $1,000 or whatever it is, right? And now you have one shot to make, and you have to make that shot, right? Otherwise, you lose $1,000. And I think that's how people look at opportunities. But the thing is, life is not like that. Life is like you can take unlimited shots, as many as you want. And some people are gonna take 1,000 shots and make 100 shots,
Mhm.
and some people are gonna take one shot and miss that one shot. And even
Also.
though that first person missed 900 shots, they're still better off because they made 100 shots.
Mhm.
And that second person, even though he only missed one shot, like it's like that, that saying, like you're gonna miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I found that life is always like that. Whenever I thought something was like a huge opportunity, later on, and I think by the time you realize that it's too late, like the reason why I said tell people to get bored, like you have to get bored of something before you actually get it. So I don't know if you heard this. Like, you know that when if you really like somebody, that's when you're not gonna get that person. And then once you stop liking that person, that's when that person actually likes you back. Or if you really, really want to make money and you're chasing that money, you're not gonna get it. But once you stop chasing it, that's when the money comes. Or let's say you really want to get better at this and you keep trying to do it, you're not going to get better at it. But once you stop caring, that's when you actually get better at it. Like you heard the concept of like not chasing,
Yeah.
because when you stop chasing, that's when you actually get it. So what I found out in life is the reason why that happens is because it's like imagine you were 5 years old right now, and um and you're like, if somebody gave you 500 euros, how amazing would that be? If you're 5 years old and you get 500 euros, how amazing is that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now if you get 500 euros, you're like, it's not that big of a deal, right? Well, and it's because you've gotten to a point where you know how to make 500 euros,
Yeah.
and it's not that's why you get it. But it took you that long to get there, right? By the time you get something, it's because you deserve it. You're at that moment. And I think that's how people look at being a millionaire. Like, oh my gosh, if I had $1 million, that would be amazing, right? That would completely change my life. But it won't, because the day before you're a millionaire, like a week before you have $1 million in your bank, you're gonna have $999,000. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. So you
So by
are
the,
your
yeah,
mind is prepared for that.
yeah. So that's why you gotta get bored, because by by the time you get something, it's because you actually deserve it. And to get to that point, you got to that point gradually. You didn't get there overnight. You know what I mean? And that's how I look at opportunities. Like, it's not like, oh, I have a chance to make $1 million. That's not how life works.
Yeah. But if you think about a person that made some viral video by accident because they
Yeah,
were
but
filming at certain
that's a
time,
myth. How
you
many
don't.
people that you know that
Mhm.
are now successful because of one viral video? Like, those are one hit wonders. Like, and most one hit wonders go disappear. I don't know if you noticed that.
I've never paid attention to that.
But just think about it. Think about somebody who's actually sustainably successful because of one hit wonder.
Yeah, I mean, probably there is a chance that to utilize that attention, but to already you need to be prepared for that to know how to do it. So if you don't know how, but you know how to do it because you probably were thinking about that and you were already prepared. So even if it's
Or
a
or you have to
surprise,
continue to keep, because what
yeah.
happens is when a viral video happens, at some point that that opportunity dies out. At some
Mm-hmm.
point, people are still going to forget, and then you have to now start from the bottom and do it again. Do you understand what I mean? That's why
Yeah.
I think that actually going viral is actually more harmful for most people. It's like winning a lottery. I heard something like 90 something percent of the people who win the lottery go bankrupt within 3 years or something.
Which is worse than before they
Yeah,
won already.
yeah. And I also think that it's the reason why most people who have that quick fame, like they don't know how to manage it,
Mm-hmm.
and then it actually turns out worse for them. Like, none of those things are sustainable, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. So
It's
which
I think the key to life and key to happiness is to
work.
be happy with boring. Like if you can't handle boring, and if you can't be happy when things are boring, then you can't be happy. Like we need to master the art of being bored. We need to master the art of being we need to master the art of boring, and that's the secret to life. You know what I mean?
Okay, master. Well, can you explain me then what you consider with boredom?
Like it's like that one post that I made, right? You live life, oh, and you get a boyfriend. That's like, oh, that was the happiest day of my life. And then he proposed to you. Oh, I was so happy. And then you graduate college and you get a good job, or you get like there's these moments in life, right?
Right.
If you add up all those moments in your life, that's like 5% of your life, right?
Yeah.
Every other day, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you walk your dog, you go eat your breakfast, you go to work, you hang out with you talk to your coworkers, you go out to lunch, you come home and you watch Netflix with your boyfriend, and you have some conversation, you have dinner, and then you go to sleep. That is your life, right? So if you're not happy in that part of your life, no amount of those spike moments is gonna that doesn't define your life. What defines your life is, and it's kind of like, I think people who had those kind of high achievement moments understand that, right? Because people will say they win the Oscar, they win an Academy Award, they're like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking to my forward to my whole life. And then the next day, a lot of people say this, the next day is like actually one of the worst days of their life, because you are literally at the height of that thing, like people cheering for you and you giving your
Mhm.
speech, and then the next day you realize it was the same exact life as 2 days before. You wake
Yeah.
up, you still have to brush your teeth, you know what I mean, and all of that is gone. And
Yeah, when there is like a really huge dopamine hit, you have dips after
yeah,
that. So I guess this
like
is
what now? Yeah, and a lot of people say that, like a lot of tech startup founders that sell their company for $100 million or something like that, they say the same thing. Like the day after you sell your company, it's like it's when they feel the most empty.
hmm. Yeah. So do you think they feel empty because they fulfilled their goal,
Hmm.
and then there's no
Now,
another?
now what? Yeah,
So this
that's
is
why
the
I think like honeymoons are important, because like I don't know who said this, but there are these things that are like uh, I think it was from Chuck Palahniuk, my favorite author. He talks about the idea of this place called it's called a liminal space. And a liminal space is like, let's say you go to an office and there's an office and there's a hallway in between, right? Or
Mhm.
you go to a hotel and then you have a lobby and then there's a hallway and then there's a restaurant or whatever it is, right? Those in between spaces are called liminal space. And those things are important in life. And what happens is a lot of people, what they do is they live with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and then they get married, and the next day they go right back to their same house,
Mhm.
and and their life continues as if nothing happened, right? But he was talking about how like the purpose of a honeymoon is like you're actually supposed to live in separate places, two separate places, and you have a wedding where
Mhm.
that's the reunion. Okay, now we're gonna start our life together, and then you go away on a honeymoon for a week, where like something is different. That's the liminal space where that's the hallway, and then when you come back from the honeymoon, now you move into a new house together, and a new
Mm.
life begins. Do you know what I mean? And
They're kind of processing. They're detaching from
yeah,
what have been
it's
and that welcoming the new.
yeah, it's like it's from the old to the new. Like you're moving away from the old chapter of your life, you're closing that chapter and you're opening the door to the new chapter, right? Kind of like, and and the reason why he said that is because he's an author. So he says that a lot of times when you look at these movies or when you look at these stories, what happens is, when someone's about to do the third act, right? The third act is like when the climax, and then
Mhm.
boom, something's gonna happen in the third act. That's the final act. That's when like, let's say you're like John Wick, and now you're about to go face the final boss, or kill the final boss, or revenge on your, daughter, or whatever it is, right? Like, usually usually you see this a lot in movie where they go away somewhere. Sometimes it's like they go and they listen to some old wise men, or they travel to talk, have this final talk with their dad, or
Mhm.
they're like physically traveling to a new location. So there's like usually before between the second act and the third act, there's a place where they go away physically somewhere before they go into that third act, and that's like he was saying that that's like a liminal space of, now I'm about to step into a decision that I can never come back from.
Yeah, like before you jump, you kind of a little bit like prepare, wait for the
Yeah,
jump
yeah,
because it's
and
if maybe
people
if
do that.
yeah.
Like, before you do something big, you might go talk to your mom or
Hmm.
dad about, like, you know what's about to happen, and maybe get your last advice, or
Interesting. I mean, if it's not like that, probably it wouldn't be that important thing. It would be just a regular thing.
yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you're not totally letting go of the old,
Hmm.
right? It's like, it's just a
Maybe
little
don't
speed
even
bump.
care
Yeah,
for the.
yeah. And I actually, maybe that's one of the reasons why divorce rate is so high now, is because people look at marriage as just, like a birthday party. You know what I mean? We don't really put a lot of thought, and, like, before, when you look at marriage as like, okay, this is the only thing. Like, once
Hmm.
I do this, that's it. This is the only time I'm going to get married. If you look at marriage like that, first of all, you're probably going to be very careful about picking the right partner. You want to make sure that it's the right partner. And
Yeah.
number two, you're going to probably give it all. You're not just going to be like, oh, I can always get a divorce if I want to. Like, you're not going to look at marriage that. So I think going into it, you're already going to have a different mindset, right? Like,
So I guess that I have one thought in my mind. Recently, I saw like marriage advice that was giving, I think, ex porn star Mia Khalifa. So she,
but why would you take marriage advice from a porn star?
I don't know who is going to take her advices, but she was giving
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
So her advices was like, I was married at, I was 20 at 20. I divorced at
Hmm.
23. I remarried at 25. I divorced at 27. I remarried at 28. I divorced at 30. So listen, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is paper. So you need to agree on paper things. And it was so
I mean, I guess, did she? Is there something like she got out of it, like a financial reward? Because if she got married and then she, through the divorce, she got a lot of money, and then she did it again and again, then
yeah.
obviously that's like, To me, that's like a
Well,
business transaction, right? So good for her if that's what she
yeah,
did.
maybe. From what I can recall, I don't think that was her intention. Her intention is if something doesn't work, just um
Yeah,
break it
but you
off.
can do that with the relationship. You don't have to get married.
Yeah, but I think this is true, and I agree. You
Hmm.
can be in a relationship, but I guess that there is some special importance, some exclusivity if this is like official. It's not as the relationship. There is something more exclusive if you're married,
Yeah, I agree.
less.
People say that like marriage is just a paper, but I don't agree with that. That's like it's like going into a business partnership or
Mhm.
doing a let's say you're a client, let's say I'm an agency, I'm doing client work. It's like doing client work without a contract. Or it's like going into a business partnership without a contract. That shit is going to cause problems, right? But when you have a contract in place, and yeah, marriage is a contract, right? And people say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a piece of paper. But that piece of paper means something because
Yeah.
what that piece of paper is signifying is that if you're, let's say, I mean, this is probably more for women, but like if you're a woman and you have kids, and let's say your husband is, the main breadwinner of the house, and he's
Mhm.
making majority of the household income, then what that paper is signifying is that the husband is saying to their wife that you're safe, that I'm
Mhm.
I'm going to take care of us, right? And that kind of like security, like stability in mind is and what she's saying is like, yeah, I'm going to take care of our family, our children. And so that
Yeah.
that agreement, it's one thing if you go into a business partnership with like, well, let's just shake on it. That's always going to cause problem. But when you have a piece of paper that's signed, then it takes it to the next level, you know.
Yes. So I guess this was on my mind. So the thing is, who are going to take advice from? Like, are going to take advice from a person um, that didn't have successful marriage, or at least, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years of successful marriage, maybe
Mhm.
having some family with this person, or but this is advice of like what not to do in terms of relationships. So, which is also advice.
Oh, you're saying her advice is an advice on what not to do, not what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that's true. You can always learn lessons from like failures as
Yeah.
much as you do from success cases.
This is what we discussed in our small group meeting about like, would you take advice from a broke person, financial advice from a broke person, or would you
That's a good point. You take advice on what not to do.
yeah. Yeah, so
Actually, you know what?
mhm.
For me, the best lessons that I've learned are from watching people on what not to do. Like I had a terrible boss. I had the worst
Mhm.
boss. And like he taught me a great lesson, which is like on what not to do.
Maybe these lessons are more obvious. Maybe when someone is successful, you kind of don't get what actually he is doing, right? Or if this is only what he's doing, maybe he has some other support as well. Maybe he's not telling you everything. So you kind of can have your doubts because he's successful. Why would he give you tricks? But if you see someone that is like really bad at something, it's obvious. Like this thing,
Hmm.
you don't want to do this thing if you want to be better in this.
Yeah.
So,
But I'm sure even that person who is successful had gone through that failure phase too. You just might
yeah.
not see it. And that's why I think there's like I you know I you learn a lot when you actually um shadow someone. Like the amount that you're gonna, let's say I was mentoring you, right? And once
Mhm.
a week we jump on a call like this, and I give you advice and I tell you what to do. Like you're only gonna get like 5% from me. But let's say you worked in my office and you're
Mhm.
spending 8 hours a day, even if you're not actually talking to me, you're just sitting over there and you're listening on my conference calls, my conversations, and you're seeing everything I do from day to
Mhm.
day, 8 hours a day, every day. For 6 months, you're gonna learn way more because you see all the mistakes that I make too, and all the failures and all the stuff that you're not supposed to do at the same time. You see those nuances.
Also, it's different when you see somebody like sitting at their desk for 4 hours, and when you hear the advice, I'm taking 4 hours. It takes me 4 hours every day to do this job.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
because
that's true. It becomes more real. It's like, okay, now I know what 4 hours feels like, rather
yeah,
than you seeing like a month. You watch a movie, right, of a montage where somebody's like working out for months, getting
yeah,
ready for like Rocky, versus when you're actually there for months working out.
exactly.
It's totally different.
So when you are working like, I guess this is why you can read a book about I don't know, some self-help book, but still it's not going to make radical changes in your life
Hmm.
just because you read that this is what you should do. So do this every day and you will be happy.
Yeah.
I
What
think
they
that no.
what you don't see is like doing that every day, what that feels like. I don't think people understand. It's kind of like when
Mm,
somebody says you have to work hard,
yeah.
but there's a difference between, oh yeah, I know I need to work hard, versus what that like. I think I told you this story. Like there's a guy named Alex Hormozy
Hmm.
who was in a you know what a fraternity is?
No.
Fraternity is like these club for guys, and there's also sorority, which is a club for girls in college, where it's like a secret society. And in order to get into a fraternity, like they go through what's called a pledging process for like a semester, for like 6 months, let's say, or 5 months or whatever. And during that 5 months, like they treat them like shit, and they make fun of them, and they like they make them like do stupid stuff, and um so they like constantly is harassing them for like months, and then at the end of it, now they're in the secret society. And that's what like that's how fraternities work. And he was in a fraternity, and like a lot of college kids here go is in a fraternity. And when you're in a fraternity, he said that, so when their pledges were going through that, what happened was every Friday night, Saturday night, every weekend, they would have a party in their house, fraternity house, with a lot of people, just beers and like trash the place, right? And
Hmm.
they'll be up until like 3, 4 in the morning partying. And then the next day at like 6 a.m., he would wake all of them up, all the pledges. And then they have to now like spend hours cleaning the house. And they do this like every Friday, every Saturday for weekend after weekend after weekend. After like a few weeks, like the pledges like form the form the committee, and they're like, we got to do something about this. And so Alex said that one day, like, uh, the pledges came to him and said, "Hey, we need to talk." And it was like serious. They went there, and they were all there. It's like this is bullshit. What you're making us do, like cleaning the house every weekend, blah blah blah. Like he can tell that like they prepared the talk and things like that. And Alex goes, when you first decided to join this fraternity, and you have to go through this pledging process, did you think it was going to be hard, or did you think did you know that it was going to be hard? And they're like, yeah, I know it's going to be hard. It's pledging, right? Well, this is what hard looks like. so so a lot of people don't they when they start a business, they start making social media or they train for a marathon. Everyone knows that it's hard. Oh yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard work to start a business. It's going to be hard work to do social media. But they don't actually realize what that hard looks like in real life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is why I think it's so good idea about that thing you have, writing time. When you're live on a call, people can jump in,
Oh, the writing
even
session.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, writing session. And because you can see that somebody is like really doing something that is hard. It's not excited, it's not like fluffy thing. Yeah, now we have a new video, a new post. No, it's like sitting and your butt hurts because of that, but you are still there because you have your goal. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like going to the library and
yeah, a
studying.
few times. I even on TikTok there is one girl, I think she's from Spania, from Spain. um so so she's
Spain. Yeah.
studying. Yeah, because in Serbian it's Spania, so it's
Oh, okay.
Spain. So she's from Spain. um and she would study. She's medical student, and I would jump on her TikTok live, where she just put like a timer, so you can see timer and her studying, and she's like repeating out loud, so you could actually hear her
It's like
repeating.
live.
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. She's studying, and that's it. After when timer is over, maybe she'll just go
Oh,
to
that's so
chat.
smart.
Yeah, thank you for tapping, like, because she earned some money while studying. And then she puts her timer again and she
Oh, that's
studies.
super smart. So, do a lot of people tune in just to
Yeah,
watch her, or are they also studying?
I wasn't there to to see what they've been doing because you can only watch her.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand words because
I
they
see
were
that a
speaking.
lot on TikTok, like those long ass live streams. Like that would
Yes,
never work on Instagram. Imagine you go on Instagram live and all they're doing is, you know what I mean?
it's boring. Yeah. I don't know what's the difference in TikTok and real and on Instagram,
Yeah,
but
I don't know either. But you know what I mean, right? Like on TikTok, I feel like that's more accepted. That's more normal. Just going live and just going showing your day, everyday life, the boring stuff, and people will
I
actually tune in
watched,
and watch
yeah,
it.
yeah, this is, oh, you know what it is, but maybe
Also,
it's not.
Twitch. People do that on Twitch, but they don't do that. Nobody will ever do that on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, I guess maybe it's also um what is maybe TikTok suggesting, what people TikTok is suggesting to you. Maybe they're better at suggesting. Um, and there is one guy, so this is kind of, this takes context. Uh, one guy that is so ridiculous. So he doesn't have, he's just appearing on, he's from Serbia. He just appears on TikTok live, and he's every day on TikTok live. Um, Many times, because TikTok shows me that, I even watch to see like, okay, what is he going to say now? And he's giving some advices about like what girls are like nowadays and what men are like nowadays. And he's showing his, I don't know, car, and then he has his one song that he sings.
Well, how long
And
is
then
the stream?
he's streaming for maybe even a few hours. I don't know. I've never been more than like 7 minutes, but from the
Mhm.
frequency of how much I see him and that people are telling him that he's all the time on live, like in the comments, this means that it's a lot. And the thing is that repetition, and he's I think he's aware that he's foolish, he doesn't know, but he doesn't care, and he earns money with that. So sometimes I would watch some people that are interesting. Recently there was a one coffee restaurant, and this woman, she has so irritative voice, like, hey, I'm gonna prepare you this, and she talks a lot, she talks too much while she's preparing that, and she's preparing the coffee, and then, what's up, yeah, we have that building here, but they are blah, 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 and
Hmm.
I just watch her doing that. So
There's a Chinese girl like that in China who's like who makes food and she takes order. She owns like a food stand, and
mhm.
it's just a video live stream of her just cooking and or taking
Yeah,
orders and like
yeah, there's something to it.
you know what it is.
um
I think it's people expect certain things in Twitch or they expect certain things in TikTok, and they don't expect that in Instagram. And so I think the expectation has something to do with it. And I think secondly, I think there's a lot more viewers on TikTok than there are on Instagram. Like if I look at Instagram, I feel like the creator uh to viewer ratio is maybe like 1 to 10. For every 10 people who views Instagram, one of them is a creator or something like that. But I feel like for TikTok, that's more like 10,000 to 1. For every 10,000 people that watch TikTok, like one would be actually making TikTok. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? So there's like way more viewers on TikTok than on Instagram. Like Instagram has more accounts, but not a lot of them are actually spending time on Instagram.
there is one stupid thing,
Hmm.
but that maybe makes difference, maybe I don't know if in what like percentage, but it will make difference in my case. So when you're on live on TikTok, you can go out of the application and do something else, and in the corner it's TikTok live still, and you can hear a voice, you can see it. But on Instagram it just,
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
it's
It should be
turned
like
off.
that's what I hate about Instagram Live. Because sometimes I'll make a wrong move and then now I have to rejoin the live or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's so annoying.
so
Yeah,
it's more.
that probably has something to do with it. I also think that when you have that many viewers, because like TikTok is mostly viewers, TikTok
Mhm.
users are mostly viewers spending time viewing, whereas in Instagram is less viewers and more creators. When you have that many viewers, I think people are just gonna be more real. I get this sense that like people on Instagram are a lot more superficial than people on
Yeah,
TikTok. You know what I mean? Like TikTok is a lot much more like not as beautiful. It's more messy, you know, more ugly people, like all those things. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think this even became some trend that you will have like the girl next door, this is the girl next door
Hmm.
creating videos. So
Yeah,
she's like went out of
yeah.
the bathroom, or preparing something, like chopping something, saying, hey, do you want to know what no, 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 and it's totally like, let me tell you girl this. So it's so like a friend telling you something, that vibe.
Hmm. It's more accepted.
Yeah, definitely. You have also some great, like, really polished content creators. So it's kind of extreme from this thing
The
to like,
polished one don't do as well though, from what I see. Like those kind of like podcast clips and those type of more
Mhm.
professional content. I noticed that they don't do as well on TikTok. I guess they don't really do well on YouTube, on Instagram either. Like what does well on Instagram are those like beautiful like drone shot of like beautiful scenery, or like somebody, like
Yeah.
really nicely shot like transitions and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to tell me about your carousel idea?
Yes. Okay. It's in our shared file. So I created few of them. They're
Which one is it?
in the
Which
process.
one do
You
you
can
want to
see
talk about?
just to
I
see.
see three. I see four. Wait, I
Well,
see five.
let me see. Okay, let's start
I
from
see
that one.
three that has like
Yeah, this date.
118.
Yeah. Um, well, let's start from the second one. Okay. Would you
Okay.
let Novak Djokovic babysit your child?
No. Okay. Novak Djokovic babysit your child. He doesn't know anything about your kid. You don't know how good parent he is, but you know he's profoundly approaches tennis, his diet, his lifestyle. It's easy to assume that any task he gets, he would take it seriously, because how we do anything is how we do everything. I like that.
Good.
I think it's because like it's also kind of like I guess that only works if you know who Novak Djokovic is, and number two, a lot of people, everyone probably knows who Novak Djokovic is,
Mm-hmm.
but they probably don't know that he's like that. Like when you told me that like he he always like interviews in the native language, like I didn't know that. I just know him as an amazing tennis player.
Probably not
But
always just for the, but saying
yeah,
something in Chinese is good
yeah.
enough.
But I don't know if people understand that. Like Tiger Woods is like that too, right? Like everybody knows Tiger Woods as like, he's very super competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, you know what? Like I think Tiger Woods is only like that when it comes to golf. Like I don't know if he's like that in every other area of their life. But there are people out there who's like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. But that's the thing. Like, do you think people know that about Novak Djokovic?
Well, I'm probably too biased to know what other people know, but in Serbia, definitely in Europe, I think they know it in Europe.
You know what would be better if you actually give examples of those things. Like, so for example, one of them is that he goes out of his way to make sure that when he interviews in different countries,
Mm-hmm.
he'll 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 know how to answer certain things in that language, right? Because that says something about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like pick another one, right? Like, do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of somebody else like that. Like I think Kobe Bryant was like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard that like when he before he died, when he started a production company, and he went he was just as like involved and into it as he was with his. And Shaq is like that, right? Shaq owns like a bunch of car washes, and like restaurants. Michael Magic Johnson was like that. Like, so I would see show examples of somebody who's like really good at something, and then another slide might show like the language thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
another slide would show how he is maybe when he washes the car.
Okay.
Maybe another one would show how he is when in his business.
So is it enough to put it on one slide? Like, but you know that he so profoundly approaches tennis, which if I stay with this example, and I kind of like more Novak Djokovic than those you mentioned, so so then like.
Yeah, now you have to find the hardest part is how do you say all of that in one slide? Like
Mhm,
for me, that's usually the hardest part, right?
yeah.
But it's also the most rewarding part because it's almost like poetry, right? When you read poetry, it's like in such a little using such little words, you can say you're there saying so much, right?
Yeah.
So how do you do that? That's I think that's where the real art comes from. I don't know if it's art, but that's like where the mastery comes from. Like, you know, like for me, the way I would do it is I would try to find a video clip of him
Mhm,
saying the same thing in 4 different languages, right?
mhm,
And then have a little caption that says, you know, like the way he the way he gives interviews, right? And then maybe like find another example, like like Chris Rock. Do you know Chris Rock, the comedian?
mhm,
So he did a HBO special once, and there's a clip out there where this HBO special was all recorded in one theater, but that was after doing a tour for like a long time in different
mhm,
cities.
mhm,
And so they show like him in New York City, Johannesburg, London, Philadelphia, like all different cities. But then, and they cut it together. But the way he tells the joke, the way he walks his movement, how he says it, like exact identically the same in each one of them. So it just goes to show you how much preparedness, and it's like for him,
mhm,
it's like literally like acting or singing, right? Like how people when he goes up on stage and tells a joke, it just seems like he's winging it and he's talking. But it just goes in to show you like how prepared he was in each one, because these clips will be like show different cities, him wearing completely different outfit and saying the exact same thing in the same way, same intonation, everything, right? So that's an example of like like how prepared he is. Another one is I heard that like uh the way he prepares for these shows is he pays like a lot of like his friends, other comedians.
mhm,
He'll pay them to come backstage with them. And this is another comedian was talking about him, and what he does is he'll go and he'll do his act, right? Because you know how these comedians do it is they go to these small clubs with maybe like 50 people, and they'll try out their joke, and then next day they'll go to another small club with like maybe 20 people and try it out, and sometimes they'll do 2 3 shows at like 2 3 clubs a night, and day after day after day, like 7 days a week, and then they do that for months.
mhm,
And through that process, they're actually perfecting their 1 hour set through this process. But he said that what he would do is he will do the club and then he'll go backstage, and all of his comedian friends would give him notes. It's like, oh, when you said this, this is what happened. Oh, this like people.
mhm,
It didn't seem like people laughed when you said this, and like they'll give him, and then he'll hear it all, and next day he'll make adjustments, he'll do it again, and then they'll give him feedback again and again and again. So just the amount of dedication and hours he puts into these things, right?
mhm,
It really shows that like so it's So when you say that, it resonates with me because you're right. Like
Yeah.
all
So,
the high performers I know are like that.
um, by the way, who is that comedian? Because recently I've only watched something that I didn't laugh. So,
Chris Rock.
no, no, the one that pays. Is it the same? Like, does Chris Rock pay these
Yeah,
guys?
I was talking about the same
Oh,
comedian the whole time.
okay. So, um,
But
yeah,
it's
then
also, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
yeah.
You know Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's like that too, right? Like when he was bodybuilding, like there's a Netflix documentary on him. You should watch it. But it breaks his career into three parts: one as a bodybuilder, second
Hmm.
as an actor, and third as a politician. And you can see that the amount of energy and effort and care he puts into bodybuilding, he puts the same amount of energy, care, and effort into being an actor, and the same thing. And all in all three cases, in the beginning of the career, everybody just kind of like dismissed him until he proved them wrong. And then when he got into acting, same thing. Everyone was making fun of him for acting, and then he proved them wrong. And then when he got into politics, everybody was like hating him, and then he proved them wrong. Like in all three of those.
Yeah.
So how you do one thing is how you do everything, you know,
Um, so
or how you do anything. Sorry.
there was one comment about like the hook. Would you let Novak Djokovic babysit your child? Because of this doesn't prove that he can actually babysit any child, because you don't know how, if someone had bad intentions about children or whatever. So you
Or maybe he doesn't care about kids.
maybe he doesn't care
Yeah,
about kids.
yeah. Maybe he doesn't like kids.
So but I guess the point is, would you let him do something important? But if I say it like that, would you let Novak Djokovic um lead your country, like whatever? If you let your Novak
It's
Djokovic,
more like, would you would you let Novak Djokovic run your company or something like that? Like, because like I use that example of like watching your child, right? Babysitting your child, right? Because that, you're right. Babysitting your child actually has to do with how much you trust the person.
yeah.
And trust can be two ways. Like, do you trust this person that they're going to be honest with you, and you trust that person as a human being, versus do you trust their capability? And those are two different. There are some people that I trust with my life, but I don't trust their capability because they're an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then there are people that I trust their capability because they're really good at, they have a really strong capability, but I don't trust him as a person. He might backstab me. Right? So those are
Yeah.
two different trusts.
So, I mean, in this context, he
You need
definitely,
both.
yeah, yeah, he needs both. This is the truth, but he is capable of doing hard things.
Okay. I'm going to ask you the same question I always ask you. Who is this message for?
It's for me. I'm kidding.
No, that's good. Like, and what what part of you? What's the myth? So let's say it's for old Jelena, right? The young Jelena. It's
Okay.
a message that you would tell to your younger self, right? What's the myth that this young Jelena believes that you need to break?
Maybe some, sometimes, um, so first of all, it's kind of a thought, like it tackles your thoughts. So this was my first intention. This was cool to write. So I knew that you were going to ask me, so I don't have like the actual who. I have better carousels for that. But when I made this, I was kind of happy with how it looked like. So maybe this is also kind of good enough to have something that
You know what I
is.
think you should do,
Mhm.
or I think we should do as a community is we shouldn't turn those into carousels yet. We should save that in our story bank,
Okay.
and you should have 50 stories like this, 50 examples or stories like this that teaches different lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I think that should come first. Building your story bank should come first. Now I have a list of stories, right? And then if
Just
somebody, yeah,
clarification. When you say list of stories, this means like examples like this: Novak Djokovic giving interviews and being a good tennis player, and Chris Rock doing this, or
yeah,
Arnold
or Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Schwarzenegger.
yeah.
So this is like a one thing. It's not a
That
matrix.
that's one, yeah. It's an advice. What it
Okay.
really is an advice. Like how you do anything is how you do everything. It's an
Advice
advice, right?
and
When people,
example
yeah,
that shows that.
yeah. And then next time you see people like that, right? When you see somebody that's like, because the advice I would give this person if I'm giving to my old self, like
Mm-hmm.
I know that I know now I know based on my experience who's the type of person that needs to hear this because I was that person.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point in my life when I was working 20 hours a day, working my ass off, and I'm like trying to be the best web designer in the world. But I didn't care about my health. I was lazy about my health. I was lazy in my relationships. In every other areas of my life, I was like, no, I just care about being the best web designer, and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I ignored those other things, right? But then, like, in order for you to be actually best designer, best web designer, for over time, what I learned is in order for my business to do well, I also need to be great at building relationship. I also need to be great at managing and leading people. I also need to be great at communicating and and
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to message this website, write copy for it. Like I realized that all of these other areas. And so what happened was I was that very single-minded person, right? Until I heard these stories about Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Oh,
and
okay.
and then when I started hearing these stories, I was really inspired, right? And then and then also through my life experience, I also saw the similarities. I'm like, oh, it really is true, right? And then I started meeting more successful people, and I saw that they were the same way. They like when they party, they party all out, and then when they work all out. When they're in a relationship, they go all in there. Like one guy I know, he's like really really um all in on his business, but he's like that with his hobbies too. And when he buys a gift for his girlfriend, like he would spend a month researching to find the perfect gift. Like it's in every area of his life, he was like that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
understand what I mean? So I started seeing proof of that. I'm like, oh wow, this is really true. How you do anything is how you do everything. And throughout my life, I've learned that lesson, right?
Yeah.
So I know that. So what now that I have this whole, it's kind of like not really a set carousel or story, but it's kind of a general idea, right? Now I have that in my memory, and I have that somewhere in my story bank. Next time I bump into, like, let's say one of my employees, I see him making the same mistake, or somebody asks me a question
Mm-hmm.
that's related, and next time I meet somebody or I get a question from somebody who I know needs to hear this message, I'm gonna say it to that person, right?
Yeah.
And that might come off in a 5-minute video, like I just did it right now with you. Like it's gonna come out different ways, and then after you give it, now you kind of understand through that experience who's the type of person that needs to hear this, and you think about that person in your head when you say it, and then you make the carousel based on that,
Yeah.
and it's going to come out differently.
Okay, this associated some examples, because when I said it's for me, I didn't actually think that through, but now that I've heard you, I think that back then when I was in primary school, I I knew I had to study and I hated it, so I would try to do it and I would sleep over my book, and then I would pick up my diary and write something. Then I had piano lessons, so I wouldn't practice for my class. Then I would kind of go there and try to go through the class without reading from the
So
paper.
you do the bare minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this reflected on like many areas that I where I needed to do something. So my room was in a mess. Things were
Mm.
everywhere. And I guess I wouldn't be someone like reliable to a reliable person to like take care of something at that time. Um, on the other hand, right now that that I think about myself for quite some time, is that I overthink too much, and I practice this for quite some time, and I don't post because it takes time and I'm into it. I'm putting my energy. This is why it's sad, because I'm putting my energy into it and no results. In psychotherapy, I have this exam that I should do, but I'm just reading. I'm like thinking about that. I'm writing my notes, but I'm not
I see what you
finishing.
mean. Yeah.
In singing, I'm taking singing classes for quite some time, and I'm improving. I see that my voice is improving, but I don't do anything about like these desires that maybe to sing.
You're not obsessed over it. Like
Yeah,
you're just doing and putting in the motion, like you're doing it, but
yeah, yeah. So the thing is, I'm overthinking everything, and I'm a little bit angry at myself because of that. So my lesson is, if I unless I expose myself a little bit, show myself, nothing will happen, because that's how I started to a little bit in singing, to do something that I'm not comfortable with, to share something that what I done in my classes, or like to actually write carousel and to show you, for you to give me feedback, and then
but
to maybe.
that's like but then it means you are obsessed over it because you really want to do a good job. You really want to do it right.
Well, yes, but I'm too obsessed. I need to be a little bit less obsessed, or at least to be obsessed, but anyway to do it. This is what I would like for myself. So the thing is, how you do anything is how you do everything. If I do everything like this, overthink
I see what you mean. Okay.
so much, I will never put anything into practice. I will be so sad that I've lost
So
chances.
you feel like you're not fully letting yourself go. Like
Yes,
whether it's singing, you're not there. There's some reserve. You're reserving. There's some reservation. Like, you
in
know what I
every
mean. You're
doubt.
not just like jumping into the water. Yeah,
Yes,
so you're second guessing yourself.
exactly.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So I. So when did you realize that that's how you do everything?
I guess in the end of last year. I mean, I kind of knew, but I always had some kind of explanation why it is like that.
Hmm.
But only like in the end of like this year, I kind of sat down like, oh, too much into this, like because I felt like I want to put something in practice. So, and I'm kind of not disappointed, but kind of sad because nothing is happening, and it cannot happen.
Wait, so can you walk me through that entire process of like you coming to that realization and being like, oh my, this is what I'm doing, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was. I did some like reflection journal where you
Hmm.
reflect on your year, and I noticed that this is how I named that in my in journal, that I'm too good girl. I'm trying so
Hmm.
hard to be like a good girl, even though I don't need to. So, and that I'm a good girl in how I approach um, psychotherapy. I want to make that like good. I want to be sure. I want to be blah blah blah. So, so I care too much about the result, and that's why I postpone. So I care too
How
much
did that thought came to mind? You just sat and you started writing or journaling or something,
that I care too much.
or you were trying to be a good girl. Like, where did that idea? Like right before you were thinking about that, what were you thinking about, or what were you doing?
Mm, well, I was thinking about how much I'm afraid of the bad outcome. So I'm avoiding mistakes. I'm not embracing them. I'm avoiding. So
Was there a specific task that you were thinking of when you were thinking about that? Like, for example, like singing with, like really giving all of your emotion when you're singing, or like, you know.
yeah, when I sing and when there are some notes, I kind of when I need to start a song, so my teacher would she would play, and then when I need to kind of start, I always start so with fear, and then I relax through the song. But the
Mhm.
first is always like just if I'm going to hit the note right or something like that.
Mhm.
Or even when something is so good and my teacher's like, you did this? I'm like, it's kind of like an accident. I don't know how this happened. So
Wait, so at that moment when you, so you're saying at that moment you kind of you let yourself go,
it, I think
or
the
no?
first it, it I mean gradually when you repeat thing, when you see yourself, when she's saying to me like show me that emotion, so she's kind of
Hmm.
pushing me to go over my limit, then I'm kind of letting myself go
Hmm.
a little bit more. But then when I go home, I think about what happened and why I need so much process to do that. So why can't I
Hmm.
do it as I would do in my home? Like I would just go
Hmm.
around and like sing something. But when I'm here, I'm
Hmm.
kind of okay, let's sing. So so then I think about this conflict between my desire and my fears. And then I noticed that in other areas in psychotherapy, I have desire to write this thing, like really to congratulate
So
myself.
was there actual moment, like a mini aha moment, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing throughout everything in my life?
I think it was more like kind of I think I was a little bit angry at myself because I am so much processing. It takes me so much time. So I think from that anger, and I guess that I kind of look back and let's see how long I'm in community, and what did you done? What have you done so far? Nothing. So I was a little bit angry at myself, and that's when I felt that wanna I want to change something about that. I'm not satisfied with that. So I don't know if this clarifies anything.
Yeah, that I think I understand that you tend to have this reserved personality.
Hmm.
But when was the moment you realized that you're that shows up in all these different areas in your life?
Well, I think a lot. So
Like, was there one moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this everywhere?
I don't think it was like one moment. I think it was, I saw it a little bit in singing, and then I I reflected how my storytelling goes so far. And then I reflected on psychotherapy and that I'm procrastinating that. So I guess it
Okay.
overlapped.
So it happened multiple times. There were
Yeah.
multiple times when you were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing like it reminded you that you're also doing that." And like for example, for me, when I saw that Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix,
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh," like it was like a little mini aha moment, right? Like, oh, I'm doing, but it's not like that was the first time I recognized it. I already
Yeah.
knew that lesson from before, but it was just a reminder
Mm-hmm.
that that like I should be, you know what I mean, something like that. Well, the reason why I brought that up is because I think that's how you structure your story. You say, like as a girl, I always felt like I had to be a good girl, right? So when I
Mm-hmm.
was growing up, you know, I would, even though I want to say something, I would not say it and reserve, be more reserved in saying it, right? Or when I'm singing, instead of just like letting myself go and making a fool out of myself, I would, you know, kind of try to like reserve that. Or like when you tell a story on Sunday service, right? Even though you're like telling a very um very emotional and very like, you're being silly when you're telling me the story. When you went in on Sunday service, you kind of like tone it down a little bit, right? And the same thing, right? On social media, instead of just like putting it out, like you give specific examples with
Mm-hmm.
5-second moments, right? Like so people can actually picture you. That's
Mm-hmm.
like that's what I mean by scene. People can picture you actually in front of stage doing that, or you know, in in the singing lesson doing that, right? Blah blah blah. Um, but then, one time I was in the singing class and it just came out, and my teacher was like, "Oh my gosh," blah, blah, blah. And like that reminded me how I'm actually doing that in all other areas of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing is, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Okay. So this is much more connected than to me. Good.
Well, that's like a personal story, but it's a great story. And I think you can even do that in the carousel, right? Like on one slide, it's like, oh, when I'm singing and I'm singing lessons, you know, I don't want to hit those high notes. Or when I'm telling a story, I try not to act too silly. Or when I'm in a class, I don't give all my opinion. I try to keep it to myself, right? And then after you give like three examples or something, you say, I always like I'm always reserved. Maybe you start out by saying, as a growing up, I always thought I had to be a good girl, right? And then you anchor it again after you give the examples. Like I always felt like I had to be reserved and I have to be a
Mhm.
good girl. And then until one day, like I was singing out loud and it just came out, and my teacher praised me. And then how you do anything is how you do everything. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I really like it. How do you have a hook?
Maybe it's also something like, mm, yeah, or because it's also maybe something that you were like. Not only is it the way you do it, everything, but it's also something you were taught. Seems like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a different carousel, or that's a different story. But you see how that same exact subject, that the same story you told, can be used for multiple lessons.
Yeah.
And depending on what lesson you're trying to teach, you might tell it slightly differently.
Mm, I see. I see.
Yeah, the hook for that, I don't know. What would be a good hook? Like for that one, I would probably say something like that. It's that's actually a huge lesson. It's not one of those mini lessons. Actually, like that's
Mhm.
like you can probably turn this thing into a book. Like that's how big of a lesson it is that people should learn from. Because I think it's like a huge life lesson that everyone should learn.
Mm.
It can almost help everyone. So like the way I would hook it is something um like this is why you might feel stuck, or something like that, right? Or because like the sense that I get when you tell this story, it almost feels like you're making very tiny progress. but actually that's not or maybe for that one, when you say how you do anything is how you do everything,
Mm-hmm.
is something like maybe the hook should be like how your personality affects your life, or like how your personal life affects your career, or something like that, right? Because you're trying to the lesson of this story is trying to connect the how your how you do something in your personal life also affects your career, and it
Yeah.
also affects your relationship, also affects your health. Like, you know what I mean? Like how those things are connected, right? And I would just stick to that. But there's also that same exact story. You can use it in a different lesson too. Now it's a completely different story, but it's the same events, but different story is like now you can add the part about how when you were young, when you were like a 5-year old Jelena, you weren't as reserved. From me knowing you, you being reserved and having to be a good girl was
Mm-hmm.
not something that you were born with. It was
Yeah.
something that you were taught. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
now, if I put it that way, and how it affects different areas in your life, the real lesson is not about how you do it, anything, and how you do is everything, but it's really about how you have to actually unlearn. It's like when you sometimes you try to say something, and then a child will say something like, yeah, like sometimes you say something trying to make it seem like, oh, I'm really free, I don't care, and then you see a child be really free, like they really don't care, right? And sometimes you look at a child be like that, and it's almost inspirational. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish I can feel that free, right? So there was a moment in time in your life when you were like that, And throughout your life, whether it's, people around you or society, whatever, taught you that, "Oh, Jelena, be a good girl."
Yeah.
And how you have to actually unlearn that, right? So that's a different lesson, same story, different lesson. And it almost becomes a completely different story because of the lesson and who you're talking to and what. Do you understand what I mean? There's one more. See, this is next level, but there is one more lesson there which I wanted to tell you is um this is more like myth, truth, and real truth.
Okay.
The myth is that you shouldn't really care. You should just do it messy, like I say. Just start messy, right?
Okay.
But if you look at how Arnold Schwarzenegger does it, you look at Kobe Bryant, they don't just do it messy. They're obsessed. They want to be the best at it, right? That's how they approach it, right? So on one hand, be messy, right? Like don't overthink it, right? And on the other hand, you're gonna do something, do it right,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like give it all, be obsessed, and do it perfectly, right? Do it well. Don't just half-ass it. Here I'm saying half-ass it, and here I'm saying, and I have that same problem too, right? You know. So what's the real truth? I was thinking about that, like, and the real truth can be, um, you know, people say, start small, you know, like start small. Don't be a perfectionist. And on the other hand, people say you're gonna do something, do it right, or don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Which is actually opposite, right? It means be a perfectionist, right? So what's the truth? I think you should start out messy, but if you're gonna do something, do it right, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, do it messy, and then eventually make it perfect. I mean, that's what I learned from my
Would
life.
you advise like that to a surgeon?
Yeah. So if you want to be a doctor, um, start out by being bad in math, being bad in science, but just do it and practice it, and then go to med school, go to good school, and then perfect it over time, and then become perfect. You know what I mean? Because if you try to start
Yeah.
perfect, you're not even gonna start.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so maybe the real truth is be
How
obsessed,
I
but
think
start messy.
I'm complicating everything and think that's my problem. Um, because how messy? I don't think it's any kind of messy is acceptable.
It's acceptable in the beginning. It's acceptable when it's the first time you're doing it. So when you watch Jiro Dream of Sushi, right? It's a
Okay.
documentary about the best. This is the best sushi restaurant in the world. It's the only sushi restaurant with the 5-star, 3-star, 3 Michelin stars.
Okay.
And this guy has been making the same sushi, the same exact way for 50 years. And he has apprentices that works for him for like, and you have to work for him for like 10 years before you can even make ingredients for him. And for you to take over the restaurant, you have to work there for like 30 years. Okay. But when an intern first comes in, when an apprentice first comes in, they're not allowed to make eggs for the first 2 years. And then after 2 years, you're finally allowed to make eggs, but they make it terrible, and then it's like throw it away and do it again. Next day he tries again, tries again, tries again, tries again, and he does this for like over a year every day. And then finally, after a year, like he looks at he was like, okay, it's good. After a year, And you have to see the look on this guy's face, the one that the apprentice that made the egg. He was like literally crying because he was so happy that he finally got it, right? And same thing, like to make the rice, you have to work there for like 10 years before he allows you to make rice. So, but then in the beginning, they all suck. They're all messy. But I think that's like, but you have to obsess over. Like the obsession doesn't come, or maybe the real truth is this: the obsession, perfectionism, and obsession doesn't come from the thing itself, but it comes from the time. Because a lot of people, when they make content, they're being a perfectionist on day one,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not perfectionist enough to do the same thing for for 5 years. So the obsession is the fact that you're able to do the thing day after day after day for years. That's the obsession. Not that you're obsessed on day one and not obsessed anymore after like a month. That's not
Mm-hmm.
real obsession. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So to give you an idea, this idea that I just told you,
Mm-hmm.
it's a brand new idea that I just thought of while listening to you when you were talking about the whole
Mm-hmm.
um your like the perfectionism and how you do things. So I don't know. It's kind of like now I have like a little spark of an idea. There's something there. I can feel it. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I feel like there's something there, and it has to do with perfectionism or an obsession is actually about time, not about the thing. And there's few things about this topic where I can feel that there's something there. Now I'm gonna have to work with it, like a clay. Now I'm gonna have to mold it. I have to say, tell it, keep telling it,
Yeah.
and at some point it will become a carousel.
Can I tell you what comes to my mind when
Yeah,
I'm hearing this? So, if you think about these guys that were preparing eggs for a year, so start messy, but alone, and do it right publicly. So they wouldn't serve these eggs.
yeah, yeah. Actually, you're right. That makes sense too. I guess when it comes to social media, posting it is actually part of the that's the thing, right?
Hmm.
Like when you're opening a restaurant, you're making this egg on practice and you throw it away. You don't actually serve it to the customer, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm making a website, I'm not gonna give a shitty website to the client. I have to practice it first.
Started messy. Like you will see
Yeah,
another version.
yeah. So I'm doing it in private, right? But the thing is, when it comes to content, posting it is actually part of the practice. That's the thing.
This is something that I'm accepting like
Hmm.
slowly, but that this is actually
Yeah.
happening.
And that's how I think internet changed everything. Because before the internet,
Mm,
if I'm printing a newspaper, I have to check the spelling, I have to double check everything, I have to editors go through it, blah 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 blah, before it goes to press. Because once it goes to press and it's out there,
yeah.
there's no changing it, right? But the internet changed everything in that way, where every information is just fluid now. It's not like boom, press, done. Now it's
Mm.
out there. That's not how it works anymore.
Even though I guess when it comes to personal stories, when it's a branding story, even but in any other case, if you imagine a restaurant, Maybe they will share something from their past, but they will detach from that. They wouldn't say like, hey, until sometimes when we have like some messy orders or we don't have enough chicken, we put some pork in it because
Hmm.
it is what it is. You don't notice. So you wouldn't say that, even if that is true, because it's
Hmm.
hurting the brand. But if it's a personal branding story, then it's like your hero journey, and you actually are excited to see how this hero is evolving. You know?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah. So if the funny thing would be if you're if you're trying to be the best restaurant in the world, a 3-star Michelin sushi restaurant, you would never serve something imperfect to the customers.
Yeah.
But if you're also trying to build a brand as a personal as a chef,
Mm-hmm.
you would record that you messing it up and then put it out there for the world to see, right?
Yeah.
Do you understand the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I threw this away
yeah,
because I suck
yeah.
at it. It's awful. And then prepare
See,
another
that in
one.
itself, right there, is also a lesson. I don't know how, but there's a difference between your craft
Mm-hmm.
versus content. Like, don't confuse. Like, if I'm painting the Mona Lisa, right? Like, let's say I'm a painter and I'm painting art, which is gonna go in the gallery. That's not content. That's my craft. But
Mm-hmm.
I might make content about that process of how I make it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
content and like I think people think of, like, if I'm writing a movie which is gonna go in theaters, a feature film that's gonna go in theaters. That's my work, right? That's the final piece of my art.
Yeah.
But I might make behind the scenes content about it. So we need to really separate the art from, like, your craft from the content. They're not the same thing.
Yeah. So, well, this proves the point that even in that case, social media posting looks like it's content,
Practice.
but
Yeah.
maybe no, but
Uh-huh.
stories might be practice. You're sharing like your ideas and what went wrong and how many drafts you have. So maybe do you like this one more? What do you think about that? Or if it's, I don't know, singing, like, oh my, I'm awful. Look, listen to this, and then share some recording. But then in the outcome, you kind of
But the thing is,
things.
yes, if you're a storyteller, if your job is a storyteller,
Yeah.
so it depends, right? If my job is a storyteller,
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm an author for Harry Potter, I'm not gonna put out my stories in on Instagram, right? But I might.
Yeah.
You know what? For me, the way it is like I. That's why I think we need to start looking at content creation almost like Instagram stories, like something that's gonna disappear in 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I might put a draft of my story out there and see, and then I might revise it. I might revise. So it's so kind of like what I told you about a comedian, right? So for me, the final product for Chris Rock, the final product is the Netflix special, the 1 hour Netflix special that's going to go on Netflix. That's the final product. But
Mm-hmm.
how that final product gets built is by going to these comedy clubs and performing it in these small crowds and building it, building it, building it, building it. A little bigger crowd, and then eventually the final product comes out of that. So you posting content is equivalent of you, like Chris Rock, performing in a small comedy club to test out his jokes. Because then it becomes easier for you to just start messy.
Yeah. It's not the same. Maybe, you know what I did with one post? I was with my friend, and we were in the car because her child was sleeping. We were waiting for her to wake up. So then we were like quietly speaking, what's up, what's going on? So I was like, I was creating some posts, so let's read. And I watched her face to see like how she reacted. So when I show her some post about boundaries, when I came to the final cares final slide, her face was like she was waiting another one to show up. So like,
Mm,
okay, this is not good. This is missing something. But when I showed her about Novak Djokovic character, she was like, "Wow, this is good." I was like, "Okay, okay." That's why I showed you this one first because I
mm.
tested it. So I
Oh,
guess.
I see what you mean. You know what it is also?
Mhm.
You might have showed the same to carousel to somebody else and might have the opposite reaction.
Really?
Yeah, because maybe she felt like that because she's a mom or something. You know what I mean? So depending on the audience,
Yeah.
some content might resonate with one audience and another content might, and that's why you need to test it because when if you share that story in a small group, for example,
Hmm.
you're gonna see the reaction from different people, right? And then you're gonna see, oh, like 70% of the people like this one more
Hmm.
than this one, and then like you can kind of gauge it, right? And then when you post it on social media, you can kind of see based on the likes and comments, you're like, oh, people didn't really resonate, like, but all of those are just data points that you're collecting, and that's why. And that's kind of what Chris Rock is doing when he's performing in front of 50 people. He's looking at the 50 people and see, okay, most of the room gets it. Versus some jokes, like everybody's just like, what? Nobody laughs. Whereas in some jokes, maybe like 90% of the room laughs, but the 10% still doesn't laugh. And now I need to think about how can I get the other 10% to laugh. Like,
Hmm.
and that's how you develop the joke. And then maybe like one joke works in a room full of black audience. But when I'm in front of all white audience, maybe they didn't get it. Right. So now you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. I see. Um, Thanks for this. I mean, we use the same carousel, but we flipped it to and made it more personal.
Yeah. I actually like the example with your own example better because
Hmm.
I think it's going to hit deeper with the audience that you're trying to talk to.
Yeah. And the more I think about, I think I'm talking to myself, like
Yeah.
neurotic people that are um, um, kind of agreeable people that are maybe too much questioning themselves, and then they're kind of want to
Yeah.
understand other person perspective. So
And that's the best way to do it because
mm,
if you can write for yourself, then 100% guaranteed there's millions of people out there who's going to also get it.
yeah,
Because trust me, as unique as you are, there are other people, that have similar personality as you that
yeah.
resonate with your personality and things like that. So yeah, try to make a carousel with I have some carousels where I use my personal story, so try
Hmm.
to do it like that. Hey, you know um growing up I was told to be a good girl, so boom, 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 and I was always reserved, and that whole message.
I really like that you remember your lessons. I feel like when I learn a lesson, I just forget that this lesson even existed, and I just focus on another one that I didn't learn. So.
When I started doing that, um when I started my agency, and I think this is the reason why. So this is why I think everybody should be a teacher. And I think parents are already automatically teachers because they
Hmm.
have to teach their kids, they have to give lessons to their kids, right? But when I started my agency and I started hiring employees, like I felt the need to mentor them. I felt the need to teach them lessons, and not just about like design or something like that. But like, and that's how I also realized that all of that ties together. Like how you do design has a lot to do with your personality and your how you act in life, how you build relationship. All of these are very related. Like life lessons and career lessons are very related.
Mm-hmm.
So what I ended up doing is every time I think of a lesson like that, like I get excited. I'm like, oh, it almost feels like when you're playing a video game and you collect something, you find something new and you collect it, and now you have it in your bag.
Mm-hmm.
oh, I found this weapon. Oh, I found this other weapon, right? And then you collect it. That's almost how it felt every time I learned a new lesson, or found a way to tell a new lesson using an analogy or example, or that Arnold Schwarzenegger example, or whatever it is. It felt like I found treasure, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna save this, and next time I'm gonna use this. So it was
Okay.
kind of selfish way, right? Like, I'm gonna use this to. First, it started out very selfish. I'm gonna use this to show off
Mm-hmm.
by telling this story or whatever it is. But then eventually got to when I saw that it actually made a difference, and every time I do it, people would like my employees will like their eyes will get huge and they will like listen in and like things like that. And I saw that it actually made a difference. Like they would actually learn from it and things like that. I became more obsessed about okay, like I need to save this for. And I think once I started doing that, you automatically remember it because it's a big deal, right? All of those things, and that's also where I started telling people that you know if you make $1 million, money just comes and goes. You know, like if you work for like 10 years and you're making $100,000 a year, you've made $1 million. But it's also that you spent $1 million, right? So money comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about knowledge is once you learn it, it's the one thing that nobody, and like let's say you're a spy and you get taken and you have this information or you have this money, like they can steal that from you. But the knowledge is inside your head. Nobody can ever steal that from you. It's the one thing that's truly valuable that you can never lose. So that's why I think, like that's another reason why every time I learn something and every time I do that, I get excited because it's like I think of it as like I'm making deposit into my bank.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing about this deposit is once it's deposited,
It's mine.
there's no withdrawal. It never goes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
maybe
Maybe this is actually the personal story bank, and now I think about the idea to make one new
oh
document, one new document with personal story bank. Like what?
yeah, I was thinking about that. You know how I made a story bank? I don't know if you saw in Circle
I think I saw
under yeah.
four, but I didn't.
I added more to it, so I'm gonna keep adding it there.
Okay.
But one other thing I might do is I might tell everybody to do that. So either like I'll create a Google Doc template for them where they
Mm-hmm.
can add it, or what I was thinking about doing is like I was thinking about making Night Owl Nation journals
Ooh.
so people can like write their stories in there, like physical journal.
Yeah. So you actually in with prompts in it and
Yeah,
everything.
like some sort of a template. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we'll call it story bank. And then maybe I'll have some questions. This is like, what did you used to believe, and what do you believe now, and what
Mm-hmm.
what's the lesson here? Describe the story, things like that, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
actually think I like. Remember, we had the idea of story bank like a year and a half ago. I
mm-hmm.
really do think we need to go back to that because one thing that I noticed from the last year and a half is the one time when I see the best stories from people is when I tell a story and then they tell their version of the same story from their own
Hmm.
life. Those were the times when hear the best stories. So we really need to go back to the concept of story bank, where they keep track of, where I give a story, and now you tell me your version. So I'll keep telling my version on Circle,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then you can write your own version in the journal of that story.
Good, good. Is it different from the previous story bank? How it looked like right
Yeah,
now?
this one is just a story, like the story only. And then what I'm gonna do is I did it on some of them. I leave a comment with the an example. So for example, I might tell the story of like um how I realized that how you do anything is how you do everything. And then in the comment, I might write something like, for example, if you look at the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, like, do you know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
so that people can see the connection
Good.
between the two, and then other people can comment their own version of examples and their own personal stories. And the more
Awesome.
people read those comments, the more they're gonna be able to come up with their own version, right? So here's what I'm gonna change. This is actually what I've been working on this week. So the step is not like mini aha moment, personal story, and myth truth sandwich. It's actually flipped. So the step should be, this is a Night Owl Nation process. Go to the story bank, read the story, read the comments.
Hmm.
Now write your version of that story that this story reminds you of in your story bank, right? And then do it again. Do another one. And so now step one is to you keep filling up your story bank with your own stories. And let's say you have like 50 stories now or whatever it is, right? Now the second step, and you can do this. You can go to step two while you're still doing step one. It can be simultaneous.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
next step is next time you see, like, let's say when you see the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, or you see a kid in the park, or next time you see an example that reminds you of one of those stories that you wrote, make a note of it and then put it down. Oh,
Mhm.
for example, boom, boom, boom. So now you have a personal story and you have some examples that has like that connects to this story, right? And then and those examples are basically coming from the mini aha moments. Oh, it's like, oh, that reminds me of this story. Oh, this reminds me of this story. And then the next step is mixture sandwich. But now when you tell the mixture sandwich, you can use one of those examples.
Yeah. You have like a meat. This is
Yeah.
uh, like the essence,
Yeah.
the meat of a
Now
sandwich.
you have a good example
Mm.
that, you know. So I think that this should be the process of Night Owl Nation. Like, so we're constantly adding to our personal story bank, our personal stories. We're constantly trying to look for mini aha moments and add it as an example. And then you go back to my story bank, you read it, and then add it more, add it. So you're building your story bank is what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And when your story bank gets to a certain point, you're gonna have so many ideas for mixture
Good.
sandwiches.
That's so thoughtful. That's good.
You like that?
Mm-hmm. I think it will boost the inspiration, and
Yeah.
many
I
times
actually
I
think it'll get the activities up too. People are gonna do more of it.
many times before I would start to write mid-truth sandwich for the assignment, I would firstly go to submit it to in previous quarter
Other assignments.
other assign from other people, and then to read their stories and
Yeah.
to see what this evokes in me, and then I would reply, because there was also like you can reply your own mid-truth sandwich
Yeah.
or your way of um,
It's too hard to start from blank,
yeah.
like from scratch.
I don't know what lessons, if I need to make a list right now, what lessons I've learned. But when I see someone's example, I'm like, yeah, of course, this is what you
Yeah.
should do.
Yeah.
But at some point, I didn't think like that. So this means that I've learned
Yeah,
something. So
yeah.
this,
And I think that's how my thought process works too. None of my
yeah,
ideas just came out of nowhere. All of my ideas came from listening to somebody else's story on a podcast or listening to Jordan Peterson's story on something. Or do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
it didn't just come out of it. Didn't just I didn't invent it in my head. It was inspired by another story that I heard.
yeah. I mean, this is also the lesson how we actually need interaction to create something new. We cannot
Hmm.
live on our own and
Yeah,
figure out life.
and
We
I
need.
think small group
Mhm.
should be like, because not if once we start doing that, not everybody's gonna go into the story bank and read it. They're not gonna put in that work, right? But as long as they go to the small group meeting and somebody else shares their story from one of the stories that I share, and then somebody else in that small group shares their story, then everyone else in the small group that listens to that story might be like, "Oh, I have one," and then now they have a story for the story bank, their own personal story bank. So that's how it should be. Like I should do the story bank. The small group leaders will read my stories
Mhm.
and then try to come up with their own story and then share that in the small group meeting. And then everyone else comes up with a version of their story, So
Yeah.
it has to spread like that.
Mhm.
You like this?
Yes. Yes, and I guess in even if maybe someone isn't going to connect to your story, because when I remember in my group when you one time you posted three stories, how you overcame your fear when you were filming yourself publicly, when you were jumping in like hot tub and then in cold swimming pool, and there was another one, I think, maybe about approaching a girl, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then we needed to do this to think about if this evokes something in us. I think something like that was assignment. And I remember that with some stories people couldn't relate. Like, I don't know, I didn't have these kind of things. I don't know what I would say. But when you
But they
hear,
related with another one. Yeah, somebody else's
yes,
story. Yeah,
yes. So you need multiple types of stories for people to have some connection
yeah.
with it.
And then they might even come up with a slightly different lesson too, which is
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as it triggers something, this is your
yeah,
job is done.
exactly. And then like later on, once they have all this story bank,
Hmm.
later on they can perfect on how
Yeah,
can I write this in a way that it's the most,
yeah,
like but that's like a different that's more like a writing assignment. It's like the what I said about the difference between art, like
design.
storytelling in the form of art versus storytelling in terms of marketing.
Okay.
Like storytelling in terms of art is we don't know what the lesson is. We don't really know what the goal is. We're just telling a story. And the process of telling the story is the art itself. It's like,
Hmm.
you learn something new just by the process of story. Like so Jordan Peterson talks about that, right? Like a lot of times when you watch when you read these like Russian novels, right? Like Crime and Punishment or, War and Peace or something like that, you don't really know what the story's about, right? It just came out of them. And
Hmm.
it's not until maybe 10 years later you're like, oh, I think this is what it was like. And some people have different interpretation of the same story, and that's art, right? And then marketing is like, I already know the goal. My goal is to sell you on this thing.
Yeah. And you
So what
want
lesson can yeah,
maximum number of people to understand message that you
yeah,
want them to
yeah.
understand.
So the story bank, when you're keeping your journal of story bank, it's more like art.
Hmm.
You're trying to use this process to figure out what I'm about. What lesson did I learn here? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then we have to have a completely separate process for storytelling for marketing, which is let's reverse engineer it now. This is
Mm-hmm.
what you want to tell, and
Yeah, it really makes sense because if we jump too early and they see that I see something sparkles an idea, a lesson, and then it's maybe interesting to write something about that. It's tempting to start and to already jump to example and to lesson. Um, but and this is how I made this example with Novak Djokovic. But only when I talked to you, I actually came to something that even if this is also fine, but
mhm.
this is more personal, and I personally can connect more right now to this
Yeah.
carousel than before talking to you. So.
Also, like to take that even further, now now the next step is for you to figure out how do I tie this to my business?
Hmm.
Like what's a lesson here to be learned about psychotherapy, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
now you can reverse engineer it, right? But first, you still need to go through this. So I think you have to go from here like this, and then go backwards like this, and then somewhere it'll meet in between.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good talk, good carousel, good job. I'm
Yeah.
so proud of you.
Yay.
Let's turn that into a carousel, a real carousel, like a guest post carousel. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Mhm.
I'll,
Okay.
I'll do it.
Have a great night. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
And see you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.